You're listening to Where We Are, a weekend conversation on faith, politics, family, and culture, hosted by me, Michael Ware, and my wife, Melissa. We bring our wide ranging experiences in politics, ministry, and nonprofit life to bear as we discuss the issues of the day. On this week's episode, we'll be talking about last week's Republican presidential debate. What did we learn from it? Where does the race go from here? You're listening to Where We Are. This is Where We Are. We are the Wares. I'm Michael.
I'm Melissa.
Hi, Melissa. We've
Hi.
had a banner weekend so far. It has been like peak fall. We went to Maryland's Italian Festival.
We did.
On Friday. We went apple picking this morning.
Yeah, at our favorite spot.
It's been great. I'm ready for fall. Bring it on.
Although it's going to be warm this week. I love a warm fall. I do. No, it was delightful. We had apple cider donuts. Apple cider donuts are just the best. They're my favorite part about
when they're
fall.
warm.
Yes, freshly baked.
No, very good. The girls loved it. The girls have been happy all weekend so far. I got back from a trip this week. I was out at Westmont College, was able to speak at chapel on Wednesday and had a great time out there. For any listeners at Westmont, thanks for listening and thanks for having me on your campus this week. I love Westmont. I love Christian higher ed, and it was really wonderful. The students out at Westmont got to hear a little bit of stuff from the book. And I was happy to be able to speak to them. And Santa Barbara's not too shabby.
Seriously, the best place for a university.
So beautiful, so beautiful. Well, I was out there just like 10 miles away from me was the Republican presidential debate.
Oh.
That was held. Yep. No, I was so close, Melissa.
So close.
So close to it. And let's talk about it. Let's dive in. Melissa, I had to watch it after the fact because I had festivities and obligations. You watched it live.
I did.
I have watched the full debate, so we're both up to speed. But as someone who watched it live, what were your first impressions?
So first impressions after around 30 to 45 minutes is that the networks this time around were Fox Business and Univision. The first debate was Fox, and everything, there were some culture war type questions, but that's typical for networks to be doing these days. But they're trying to ask substantive questions, and it just feels really disconnected from reality. Because you have the front runner, Trump, who is up by more than double digits through. I know we don't have enough polling in a lot of the states, but nationally he's been up by double digits. That's the story around him, that he's just wiping the floor with all these candidates, even if he combined them, that they wouldn't be beating him, sort of thing. And the questions just feel disconnected from the race in general because we have a candidate who's not even there. And it means that you've got this group of people who are debating, key Republican issues or key issues that are of concern to Republican voters. Some of them sort of not because they go more towards the culture war, but they're being asked anyways. And then you've got Trump giving a speech on the side to a different group of people, and he skipped it the last time and did an interview with Tucker Carlson. It just feels like these networks haven't figured out how to deal with that point. And then the campaigns themselves have sort of, I feel like, taken an easier road in sort of pretending like, okay, he's not there, so we're not going to, go after him too much, unless you're Chris Christie. Chris Christie, his campaign team obviously has made Trump the focal point. Trump remained the focal point for Chris Christie the second time around with this second debate. But the rest of these campaigns are sort of like pretending like, it feels like they're in La La Land, planning-wise, with how exactly they're crafting their answers. And maybe, Michael, you'll disagree with me on that point, specifically from a Governor Ron DeSantis point of view and how he performed in this debate, which I think you and I will agree that he did very well this time around. But that was my overall first impression. And then the second impression is that all of these candidates, Vivek Ramaswamy for a second time in a row, got completely under their skin. And for somebody like former Governor Nikki Haley, that's a sort of place where you start to get into caricature, you start to get into meme land, you start to get into comparisons between Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg of the 2020 campaign. And I'm not really sure how much longer that can last for her. I'll end it there for first impressions. But what were yours with watching it back?
Yeah, well, so first, just to do some context setting, September was an awful month for anyone who wants to see someone other than Trump be the Republican nominee, including the candidates up on that stage. Trump's polling was incredibly strong. Mm-hmm. We passed Labor Day, which, is typically you talk about Labor Day in the context of general elections held in November, but it also kicks off the sort of fall push into primary season.
Yeah,
and we've been. We're now entering October, mm-hmm. and if anything, Trump has solidified control of the race. And so that's the context for this. National polling, he's very strong, but also we're not seeing state polling close at this point. Ron DeSantis has had his debate performance was underwhelming. We saw Nikki Haley take a bump in polling, take a bit of a bump in fundraising. And we've seen chatter just this week, renewed chatter about Youngkin jumping in as sort of like a white knight for the establishment class. Tim Scott, who was picking up speed going into and then definitely coming out of going into the first debate, his campaign has not had. He's lost momentum. So that's some of the context. There's other context. Mike Pence still hasn't gained footing, and I think the rationale for his candidacy continues to be something that people are increasingly coming to understand just isn't there. It just doesn't fly. Vivek, I think, lost a bit of a momentum out of the first debate, and I think as people get more serious about the race, I do think his sort of approach isn't going to be successful. So that's a bit of the context. On the debate, I thought Governor DeSantis had a great night. I thought DeSantis had a really strong night. We started to see him get a couple of dings in on Trump. Nothing too forceful, but mm-hmm. he several times in the debate said that Trump was missing in action, and looked straight to the camera. I know there are all these memes about how awkward he is. I thought he was strong in presentation for this debate.
It's becoming ridiculous at this point, sort of zooming in on his smile. I mean, come on, people.
Yeah, I saw this debate as a move towards the establishment for him.
Yes.
Which I think is actually where he needs to be. I think it's responsive to Nikki Haley bringing up some support. I also think he lost some donors who want a Trump alternative.
That's right.
After the first debate, and he wants to reestablish himself as the person, not just for the votes, but for the money if you want to defeat Trump. If someone else takes that title, if Youngkin jumps in and is able to do it, if Nikki Haley or Tim Scott get in or sort of take that mantle, DeSantis is in a pretty tough position. just as an example of what I thought was DeSantis's strength, let's play his final answer from the debate.
What is your mathematical path,
Yes.
Governor DeSantis, in order to try to beat President Trump, who has a commanding and enduring lead in this race?
So polls don't elect presidents. Voters elect presidents.
Right.
And we're going to take the case of the people in these early states. We're going to do it in a state-by-state direction. And why? Because as Reagan said in his day, this is our time for choosing. We are not getting a mulligan on the 2024 election. Republicans have lost 3 straight elections in a row. We were supposed to have a red wave with inflation at 9%. It crashed and burned. Not in Florida, it didn't. We delivered it in Florida. And so we've got to choose right. We've got to win. And we need somebody that's going to be able to serve 2 terms. So in January of 2023, they'll be able to address the nation saying, we turned the economy around, we secured the border, and we fended off the threat from communist China. As your president, I will get that job done.
Governor Christie, I believe I did see you write something.
So that was him for much of the night. I thought a certain strength, a certain clarity. He brought up his military service, which I think a lot of Americans don't know that he went,
Yes.
that he enlisted. I thought he spoke well and invoked his record in Florida in a strong way. I thought he looked like he had command in this debate. It wasn't a 10 out of 10 performance, but I thought it was a significant improvement over his performance last month. And I think there were probably some again, conservative donors who maybe were ready to jump ship had he not had a great debate performance, who will hang on until the next one. So that DeSantis did himself some favors in this debate. I thought Tim Scott was much stronger in this debate than the first debate. A lot of questions on social media about the last 20 minutes, half hour of the debate. Him and Haley went at it. Mm-hmm. If you listen to this podcast, you already know exactly why that happened.
Yeah.
And this is why we have been saying this, so that so that when you're watching the debate, you go, oh, I know why this is happening. This seemingly inexplicable sort of contest and mini debate that is happening. I know why it's happening. And just as a reminder, or for new listeners, this is one of the vital primaries within the primary. Scott and Haley know they both can't go into South Carolina on the ballot. And so they need to settle who will be South Carolina's candidate ahead of South Carolina. Or I should say, they don't want to go into South Carolina. Perhaps their egos or some kind of strategy will mean that they'll both end up on the ballot. But that comes with such tremendous risk that both of them want to do everything that they can to make sure the other is out of this race, at least before South Carolina heads to the polls for their primary. And so that's why what we saw. We saw, I think both of them were waiting for like the first one to make the attack. And then and really it was Haley. And then you saw Scott sort of unload some of the opposition research he had, mentioning not only a gas tax, but again, in what seemed inexplicable to many folks on social media, and what didn't land. I don't think the punch landed, but he attacked Haley for having new curtains in her office as UN ambassador to the UN, saying that it was he said that Governor Haley had never seen a federal dollar she didn't like. So it was interesting to see the two of them go at it a bit. I will say I'm not quite sure either one of them landed a knockout punch.
Yeah.
To be sure. I think Haley was strong again.
Yep, definitely strong.
I will say Governor Burgum, I think had a better.
Greatly
I think this is the
improved.
kind of performance that I think he wanted in the first debate. He was ignored, and to the moderators, there's a line between enforcing the rules and being disrespectful.
Yes.
And I do think that the way that they enforced the rules, the way that they were snide towards candidates,
Yes.
did not help the dignity of the event, of the debate. And then I should just say about Christie. Actually, let's play Governor Christie's final answer in the debate, because I think it'll resonate with many of you. It resonated with me, to be sure.
Governor Christie, I believe, excuse me, Governor Christie, I believe I did see you write something on the card. Who was it?
No, but I'll certainly tell you.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I think I've been the only one on this stage who's been clear about this. I vote Donald Trump off the island right now. And the reason I vote him off the island,
Any of the people on the stage
you know
off
what?
the island.
Every person on this stage has shown the respect for Republican voters to come here to express their views honestly, candidly, and directly, and to take your questions honestly. I have respect for every man and woman on this stage because they've done it. Vivek, put your hand down for a second, would you? I still got time, dude. So chill out. Here, look. This guy has not only divided our party, he's divided families all over this country. He's divided friends all over this country. I've spoken to people, and I know everyone else has, who have sat at Thanksgiving dinner or at a birthday party and can't have a conversation anymore if
Governor,
they disagree with Donald Trump.
Governor
He needs to
and
be voted
candidates.
off the island, and he needs to be taken out of this process.
Can we get Vivek 15 seconds?
You got 15 seconds.
And so, yeah, I thought Governor Christie had a good night in terms of representing himself, his point of view. I think playing the role he's supposed to play in this, which is turning folks' attention early on to Donald Trump. I guess one more thing I want to say about the debate specifically, and then I have a number of things to say about sort of what the debate brings to mind for me.
Yeah, I have a thought there too.
The debate opened with a question on the strike, on the UAW
Yes.
strike and the economy. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of incredible to see these candidates give their own reasons for why the workers are upset that don't take into account what the workers are actually saying.
Yes.
And so, all of them basically said, the workers are striking because of Biden, like the workers are striking because of government spending. And like, I understand the argument they're making, but that's not why workers are striking.
Yep.
And so you need to, you need to be able to respond to what people are actually saying. Now they don't want to, and that's the other thing I'll say about this debate, which is that it's become a trope that the candidates never answer the actual questions. Mm-hmm. But in this debate, it was just insane, especially Mike Pence. Mike Pence does not care what question is asked of him. He was asked about DACA, and he spoke for 3 minutes. He doesn't say anything about DACA.
Yeah, he had a lot of lines memorized.
I mean, it was incredible. There were a lot of canned lines, to your point. Mm-hmm. Some of them worked better than others. I will say, look, if Donald Trump had rolled out some kind of nickname for somebody, everyone would have said, "Oh, what a genius!" Da da da. I watched it live. I don't think Christie's Donald Duck line was like that cringe, as Gen Z would say. And the fact that there were so many never Trumpers who were ridiculing it, and it was just like a reminder of the fact that so much of this never Trump stuff is like individuals platform building. It's like, how about you just swallow it and go with it? He's ducking the debate. I think it's like it's not going to win any awards, but just the fact that we're all consuming this as entertainment. We're all judging whether it landed exactly right. It's a critique that makes sense. And for all these people pining for someone to take it to Trump, and then someone does, and it's like, well, he really, if the delivery would have been 10% different this way, then maybe I would have applauded it.
Let's just call it as. It was one of the most, in terms of the response that I saw on like Twitter and things, it was one of the most elitist conversations of the debate that I was reading online. It was beyond ridiculous. But yeah, Christie, him talking about Trump not being on the stage, it was towards that end as well, where at the end of the debate, where I had been feeling this going into it, but I hadn't like quite articulated it in my head. And, I'm not a Republican voter, so I'm always constantly thinking about like how, a Republican voter would be feeling towards a lot of things. And it finally solidified in my head what I feel like is going on. And to me, if I'm feeling like this as a Democrat, I can't even imagine how it could be amplified potentially in a Republican voter. But the power dynamics here, that with the first debate about Trump not being there, it was being framed and it was being talked about, and the rationalizations around it was this is going to be a fear of missing out situation, a FOMO situation, where he's being left out, everybody's gathered here at this debate, but this time around, and I always felt kind of uncomfortable with that kind of like explanation of like, he won't help but being able to jump in, and he'll come in on the second or third debate, and this is where all the talk is happening and the momentum of the campaign is that's just not true, because this second time around, the power lied with Trump being outside of the debate, and actually it felt like all these candidates sitting in this room were the ones sitting there with FOMO, with the fear of missing out. And that, in some ways, what it brings up sort of in some ways, like from an emotional place, especially with our politics, is that fear of missing out. You start to feel like this is not where the cool kids table is at. This is not where the power lies. This is not where the conversation is happening. This is not where the momentum is happening. He is so far ahead that he does not need to be there at all, and nobody can really address him in any kind of way, that it just feels like, what is this even for? What is the actual point? And that sort of solidified for me towards the end of this debate, especially with that sort of closing statement from Christie of him being, out of the room, and this is where it's at. It's kind of like, oh, it kind of feels like the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to make do with what they have, which is that they're running against a front runner who's 30 points ahead. And we'll see. I mean, so far the idea that Donald Trump is disrespecting Republican primary voters does not seem to be taken too seriously by Republican primary voters. But I think part of the issue is that they're not really tuning in yet.
Another thing, yep.
We do have, it's basically less than, basically it's like 4 months to voting. I mean, a little less than 4 months.
Yeah, the first caucus. Well, I mean, the first voting is the caucus in Iowa on January 15th.
And so, look, this thing is gonna turn. I think I'd be surprised if the next debate you didn't hear more talk of Trump. That sites weren't trained on him a bit more. I think these candidates are worried about sort of cutting off their chances too soon. Their cautiousness could be fatal with a front runner at 60%. But I do think that they are, particularly DeSantis, is saying, look, if I can maintain my second position, my position is number 2 in this race, no matter how strong, we're going to see candidates drop out after Iowa. South Carolina, if DeSantis could take advantage of his place in sort of the Sun Belt, and if DeSantis can come in first or second in South Carolina, it's possible that clears the field, and it's just him and Trump. And then you head into Super Tuesday with, 90% of the delegates not yet decided. And I think DeSantis is hoping that he'll be in a position where not just all of the never Trump, where not just the non-Trump voters will be behind him, but all of the non-Trump leaders, everyone on the debate stage. I think Vivek will probably endorse Trump, try to be number 2. But everyone other than Vivek, I think DeSantis sees them as a possible endorser. And so what happens, you have, maybe Trump has a ceiling in the Republican primary of 65, 70, maybe if he's able to get to 70, then that's pretty good. But let's say Trump's ceiling is more 65, 60. How many voters would it move to have just a chorus, a relentless chorus of ads, of endorsers, of cable news just blanketed with all the people in this race? I mean, kind of like we saw when Buttigieg, Klobuchar, all the Democrats endorsed Biden.
Yes.
And I think if there is a way to beat Trump, it will be quick. It will be like a switch goes off. Like I don't think Trump loses in like a war of like attrition. I think he loses. We'll know when he's lost. Like we'll know when the momentum has turned. And I think DeSantis and some of these other candidates are hoping that they'll be in the position to take the benefit of that if it happens, if they're able to create that moment. Just one other thought, Melissa, and I know you have something to say, which is, it did occur to me watching this debate, so part of the way polarization works is that people's sort of convictions are fluid.
Yes.
And determined in large part by what like the in-group critique is of the out-group. And if there's any leading critique of Joe Biden, it's that he's too old.
Yes.
And that he can't serve for, he's not assured of serving the full second term. There was an interesting moment in the debate. I believe it was DeSantis who said this. I may be wrong, but and it wasn't a big moment. It just kind of slipped in. But one of the candidates, and again, I think it was DeSantis, said, the Republican Party deserves a candidate who's going to be able to serve eight years.
Yes.
And it just
was DeSantis, because
Yep.
I also perked up at this moment too. I
So-
know exactly where you're going with this.
So it just like hit me. I don't think it's the kind of thing where you want to like start, rolling it out, now in like a big way. But we're going to have 3-4 more months of Republicans just hitting Biden on being too old, of that being like the thing that you could say about Biden, that even if you're talking to Democrats, like they won't disagree with it necessarily. Like
Yep.
they'll just kind of give you that one. And so that makes like Republicans feel all the much better. It's like, well, this is like a clear way to see. Obviously, you can't go with Biden. He's too old. Everyone knows that. It could be an interesting moment if we get down to a 2-person race, January, February, March, for the age critique to be used against Trump. And if you could get enough people on that message, not just saying this isn't who we want to go into a race with Biden with, but saying, we need 8 years of Republican control. Trump can assure us of that. Yes, making the case that he's not the strongest person to take the age debate to Biden. You're going to have a Republican electorate that is basing its argument against Biden on age, and so it just I would not be surprised if this race led in a direction where Trump's age becomes a topic of conversation.
Completely agree. I have thought this for months on end. Will this actually come back to bite them? Because when we did do an episode on the age debate several weeks ago, and when I created the graphic for it, what I went and did was I put Biden's age and I put Trump's age, just to sort of remind people that they're very close in age, actually. When you sort of get up there 4 years, that's not a real big difference. And because I've been thinking the entire time, does this argument only work against Democrats, or will it actually work against Trump or Republicans? And I completely agree with you that there could be a real opening there. The other thing that I wanted to say, and it was to the point just before this, so perhaps we've lost the thread, but I do want to say something occurred to me that, with DeSantis, like you could see somebody like DeSantis happening pretty quickly, where if a bunch of the other candidates got behind him, then a bunch of momentum would be behind him, and then you might have actually somebody viable to challenge Trump and the kind of levels that he's polling at right now. I would imagine, if I were the DeSantis team, the candidate that I'd be talking to right now actively and trying to convince him to drop out and support, not like, next week, but maybe in a few weeks, so that the spark happens, maybe just before some of the first voting starts, would be Chris Christie. The DeSantis team should be talking to Chris Christie, especially with how he's polling in New Hampshire. And if DeSantis could take on Christie's polling numbers in New Hampshire.
I disagree.
Why?
I think you want Christie on the stage as someone who's reliably going to go after
gunning
Trump.
at Trump. No, that's why I say several weeks from now. I don't say next week.
No, yeah, I mean, if my
I'm talking
goal,
like end of December.
Okay,
beginning of January.
well, okay, we're in September now, so yeah, I
It's
think
October 1st, Michael.
not when we're recording.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say, and I've said something similar on the podcast before, but I thought you were going to say Pence.
No.
I think Pence is the endorser you want, not on the stage. On the stage, he still thinks he's going to be president, and it's too muddled. But if someone could convince Pence to drop out and become say this is the person who's going to carry on the policies of the Trump-Pence administration, but here's why Trump shouldn't be president. Like, I think Pence is the most effective endorser out there in the race. I think Christie's effective on the stage, and then I think once he's off, I mean, Christie's fine on the Sunday morning shows, but I don't think Christie's bringing, except to your point in New Hampshire. To New Hampshire,
no, that's
Christie's endorsement will send a signal that maybe who he endorses is the non-Trump, the Trump alternative.
All I'm talking about is New Hampshire. It's the second state. If Trump trounces, is DeSantis in Iowa, and DeSantis does get second, but is sort of trounced. A great thing would be if his numbers greatly improve in New Hampshire, and Chris Christie would be the person to hand him the amount of votes that he would need to really build up those numbers. If the state polling is correct right now, which we don't have enough state polling.
But that's exactly how this plays out, right? I mean, Christie makes an endorsement sometime between Iowa and New Hampshire, and I don't think it's decisive at all, but it could be part of a surprise winner in New Hampshire for sure. No, I think that's right.
Okay.
All right, that's our recap of the debate. We're really interested what you thought of it, and so let us know. And thanks for listening. We love doing the show for you. Would ask that you leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast. And we'll be back next week. This is Where We Are.
Bye.
It's the end of the week.